Hello, chess friends. I've got a lot of replies that you guys are enjoying the game of the day series. And so for today, I've got you a sweet little gift. It's a game of the magician from Riga, Mikhail Tal. And this game was played between Albero Roman versus Mikhail Tal in 1961. So this was the peak year, peak time of Mikhail Tal. Between those few years, he was really at the best form of his entire life. I mean, he got into great form. Later on as well, he created some dazzling records, specifically the one where he was undefeated for a long, long time. But even here, this was the time when he was super young, and 1961 was the year when he was the crowned champion. So this is definitely going to be special. Let's have a look at this. White Albero Romain has thrown in a check to the Black King, and any normal player like you and me, who's not a legend like Tal, would have played King to g8 and basically accepted the perpetual after knight h6, king h8, knight f7. That would have been a perpetual, of course, but that's not Tal. After the move, knight to f7, check, Tal. Guess what did he play? It's pretty simple. Tal sacrifices queen. For nowadays, he's quite famous for that. I think there are tons of memes of Tal where he's talking about sacrificing the queen. So, queen takes f7, not really a surprise at all for you guys. So, Tal sacrifices queen. Now, let's see if he has enough for the piece. So, of course, white captured it. Now, there is rook to d3 attacking the queen. Whenever I'm gonna focus on this concept, it's called as Zushan Zwak. Whenever your piece is under attack, you do not defend it, but rather go for attacking the enemy piece. The rook was under attack, so Tal did not just defend, but rather went on to attack the white queen. So rook to d3, the queen has to move away. Queen to e2. Well, something like there was a much better continuation, that was queen e1, because after bishop to d4, check, king g2, knight e5, bishop to d5, saving the bishop, c6, rook d1. A variation like this would have happened, and basically after moves like this, after queen b4, this is the engine line basically, and white would have been able to deliver a perpetual or at least make a draw with the queen. So this was white's best hope, but of course after the move rook to d3, he was not able to calculate as better as Tal and played queen to e2, and this was a serious mistake. In fact, after this, Tal's attack is like an avalanche, it just goes through. Bishop takes pawn. That's a check. The king, as you can see, is totally exposed on the diagonals, and bishops are the king of the diagonals. So, king to g2, the king steps up, tries to find a secure place, but of course, that's not going to happen. Now we get another attacker in the game. Knight to e5 does a very important job. It protects the rook, controls the f3 square, at the same time attacks the white bishop. So that does a multiple duties. It functions a lot of duties over here. So rook to d1 played by Albero. What should Tal play here? Well, if you know Tal and players like Bobby Fischer and Mikhail Tal, they have a typical style. When you attack them, they don't just defend. In fact, this is very common in the game of Bobby Fischer. Whenever you attack him, he'll always go for intermediate moves. That's called as in-between moves or Zushenzok. The same happens with Tal. They are very similar when they're attacking. They always go for Zushenzoks and they always try to attack their opponent back. So, Rook d1 played. Tal is not going to exchange the rook, of course. He's going to keep the rook on the board and rather would play rook to e3, attacking the queen. Whenever he is under attack, he throws the ball back, and it's white who is under attack now. So the queen has to move. Queen to d2, by the way, was necessary move over here, but of course white did not play that. In fact, queen to f1 was played. This is another slight mistake, and this allows a huge attack. So it starts with bishop to e4. Tal's pieces are now completely into the center. You can see they are beautiful pieces placed right in the center of the board, and they are just too strong for the white king to handle. So first of all, that's a check. What would happen if the king steps back? Well, that is a total disaster. Can you spot what should black play over here? King to g1 is in fact turns out to be a huge mistake because of the move rook takes on g3, double check, and a checkmate. So definitely the king cannot step back. He has to come forward with king to h3, and now the king is getting in the open, and this is the perfect time. You should not back down at this time, but rather go for the king. So here we go. Rook to f3, again attacking the white queen. Zushin Zhuang. The queen has to move. The queen moves. Now bishop to f5. attacking the king. That's a check. Now, king has two variations. Basically, there are two options. And this was the point when, after calculating a lot, Albero decided that it's better that we resign here because Tal is gonna really destroy him. So, what's the problem over here? Let's have a look at this. After the move bishop to f5, king to g2 is one option. And there is a as well as king to h4. So basically, there are two options over here. I'm gonna take you through both of them, starting with the obvious king to g2. This is pretty easy. In fact, after the move rook to f2 check, we are going to win the queen back, and we are going to also capture the bishop. And here black has an absolute edge. We have two pieces, two minor pieces for the rook. At the same time, we have an extra pawn. This is definitely not tough at all for a player like Mikhail Tal, who's a world champion, of course. Not at all difficult to convert this position. So going back, after the move bishop f5, the king can also step on the h4 square, and you might ask, where is the checkmate? In fact, there is a very sweet little checkmate which happens after the move bishop to e3. It's just a little move, and we're controlling a lot of squares, specifically the g5 square. We are threatening to push forward our pawn. To give an example, something like, as you can see, the bishop is attacked, white bishop, so he might defend his bishop with something like bishop d5. But now comes the checkmate with g5 check. The king has to step even further up the board. King h5, bishop g6. Now you see the purpose of the knight. Knight controls a lot of squares, including the g4 square. The king has to come even further down. King to h6, and all of you can now find the mate. Basically, there is also g4 with the check with the from the bishop, but of course that's not even necessary because in that case he will sacrifice the queen. But rather, the simplest option is simply to go knight to g4. Knight throws in a check, and that is enough to give a checkmate. What a beautiful attack! Even in fact, Tal got not only excellent compensation, I think more than that for the queen, but also a great attack. And this is one of his specialities. He can always sense initiative, just like a shark can sense a tiny drop of blood in the entire ocean. Similarly, Tal can sense initiative from miles away. So, hope you enjoyed this great game by Mikhail Tal. And this was, of course, the star move of the game, Queen takes knight, and something that Tal would do, of course. Sacrificing the queen is nothing odd for Tal. So, hope you enjoyed this. Tal was at his peak, it was 1961, and that's the reason I showed you this game. I thought this was really something that I should give you in return because you're really enjoying the series. So, thank you and see you next time.